Alright, welcome to the latest episode of The Altar that we're going to start early today, but of course I'm back at work and I've been having some technical difficulties. So we're using Zoom to record this and hopefully it doesn't sound like complete ass, but I'll find out in about 40 minutes when Zoom cuts it off. I am joined again with my lovely co-hosts Yimra and Ben. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
How you guys doing after me sending you 15,000 links to different Zoom meetings to test?
Oh,
It's like it is what it is. All right, so since we're on a fucking time constraint, at least I should have looked into if we could fuck with Zoom to get over 40 minutes. But today we're gonna talk about the Wild West, maybe even the mild Wild West. Wild. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm not a cowboy. But Yimra's gonna be taking the helm of this one because he has done research in the past. He's going from memory on this. I'm gonna show my cum stained t-shirt for the video. Oh, and the nipples, man. It's not even cold in here.
yeah.
Nice.
Just excited, baby.
Gotta mark this not safe for kids on YouTube later, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, kids shouldn't watch anything political anyways, let's be honest.
yeah, true.
Then you get people who are Tumblr users like us.
Yeah, true. Politics is the whole reason I got on Tumblr. If I was just a fucking dummy that didn't care, I'd probably never be on Tumblr.
Just some fucking normie making memes on Facebook. Hell
If,
yeah.
if I was like a cum brain, maybe I'd be on Tumblr. But like, cause that's like all
Not
like,
anymore, bro.
all those dudes are like conservative cum brains anyway. Like I don't think I've ever seen like some porn addicted person on there that didn't like any political stuff. It's like nope, just titties for me. Oh wait, I need my guns. It's like always like it's guns, titties. It's like, oh, I need me a big mommy milker like that. I don't think that's Michael actually that does that.
In jean shorts.
Yeah, in jean shorts.
No, I'm in jean shorts.
So what I wanted to talk about, I want to get what Yimra knows on the Wild West, basically how it operated essentially, because I have like a limited understanding of it. I'm just aware that it's not as wild as people were led to believe, like how movies have it. It's like some crazy like outlaw land where like anything like went, and a lot of people, like a lot of crime or whatever, like what the movies made it out to be. But also I want to see if like maybe there's something there for like a path to anarchy, like if that was like a kind of a blueprint maybe of how anarchy would be, perhaps. That's why I'm giving you these questions prior, Yimra. So then I'm just gonna have you just flow with it.
All
Best
right.
you can. Anytime.
Oh, no.
Anytime you're ready,
I
you're
heard
right.
the audio stop.
I heard it too, and I was just like, Q,
Yeah. Oh, do
Q.
you guys hear me turn this off?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. That's why I wasn't looking at the video. I heard the
Oh,
audio
okay.
stop.
Well, that's a nice little thing. I know, like, did the audio stop for everything, or?
No, just
just
you.
you,
It
but
kind of
it's still
sounded
awful.
like you dropped into a void, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, maybe I'll just manually click mute so I can do this for. All right, go.
Oh, it's so off-putting. So you can kind of starting off the Wild West is kind of
Wait,
fun.
I'm sorry. Let me do this. Do you like an audible every time I do this?
It's extremely
Even when you click.
easy here.
Okay, fuck. All right, well, you know what? Audio editing is just gonna be good this time. I think I have some weird setting in Zoom where it like notifies everybody who mutes. Because what does it do specifically?
It's just like a hard shut off. Like it literally sounds like somebody closing a door. It's the only way I can put it.
Interesting. Even because I was clicking the button. So
Yeah.
maybe it's all right. Maybe that's some audio setting I'll have to do if we do this next week. So okay. So I'm sorry, Yimra, go.
You want to know what it is? Actually, you have a little bit of like, I guess there's a fan in the background or something. So when that cuts out, it's like noticeable.
Oh yeah, that's the computer fan.
Oh, don't worry about it. Like just rock it.
Yeah. All right, good.
Yeah, just
I'll worry
rock
about it
with
on Audacity later. So Yimra, go baby.
Yeah. So first of all, the Wild West you can consider it started around 1865, whole Civil War, when we now had time to actually go further west. Not that we already weren't there or not. That's when like the most pinnacle people see the Wild West as. And then depending who you ask, historically speaking, it either ended in like the early 1890s after like the battle at Wounded Knee. Also mixing with the fucking massacre. Now I have to quickly Google, which I always mix
Hey, man,
it to
take your time. while you're doing that, I'm curious that if, because I've got this on one half of my screen, I wonder if it's gonna record it, because we're all just 1, 2, 3 lined up. But I don't care.
Oh,
Who's
no,
on the
sorry,
bottom?
no. So,
Yeah, you're the bottom, unfortunately, and Yimra is the top. So
God
Perfect.
damn it.
so yeah, no, I was correct. I just always mix that up, and the one where Custer died. But Wounded Knee is usually kind of like a pinnacle point where like the West kind of died, or 1892, because by then statistically there's no part of land in the continental U.S. that we considered like unseen. But some people say until 1912, and you can argue pretty far into the early 1900s when the Wild West ended because of how stronger federal and state law enforcement kind of became throughout that time. And some good points to or for against it is really just basing, how do I put this?
So the West died essentially when there was a more prominent government force in play.
Yeah, one thing is the more prominent government force. Another part is just the fact that there was no frontier left to be discovered. There's no West to get onto. I mean, a big thing where stuff like the Homestead Act, which basically granted everybody 160 acres of land, as long as you actually did something with it within a certain margin of time. It was like 5 years.
Yeah.
Which was like a pretty early one. Then you have things like the Pacific Railway Act in 1862, which pretty much you had like a decent amount of like range around those tracks that the government would basically give to the people building the railroad. And I'm sure you can read a shit ton of stories where people are like, we're building, a railroad through basically your house because we fucking hate you. And they kind of had to say, yeah, okay. Which usually turned into a shootout, or it turned into, we're going to give you money to fuck off out of this place you built during the Homestead Act. Which are just kind of like pretty much even before the Civil War, you already have the U.S. government kind of involving itself. You could say it's in some way to assist the private citizen, because the Homestead Act gave you like 160 something acres of land, which is absurdly fucking large in our day and age. But for farmland, I again, not a farming expert, but I'd assume that is a good chunk of land to do such a thing. Then you had, of course, as these frontiers were starting to get owned by the U.S. government to become states, you'd have your local, your judge, your circuit judge, you'd have your U.S. marshals, and eventually you would have sheriffs and assistant deputy marshals, deputy sheriffs, so on and so forth. For most towns, once government started reaching there, and at least with the sheriffs of the time, they had some other jobs like marshals would take census. They would have to clean up like the courtroom, shit like that. Like that stupid job they just give to a deputy marshal. But sheriffs, for example, didn't have exactly like insane amount of power. Usually they had to be somewhat good with the community because they're voted in. You could have easily have just said, listen, sheriff, we don't agree with you. We're going to either vote you out or tell you get fucked, because the entire town will tell you to go fuck yourself. But generally the sheriff was smart enough to not do that, because yet again, he's making money off of the taxes from, say, the local mine or whatever major business. That's his check is from that, as well as bounties, which is a whole other conversation on its own. So your sheriffs of the time had power, but they were smart enough to not use it in such a way that would make them a problem to the community. Usually say, hey, there's rustlers fucking with John Lanningstan's fucking ranch. I'm going to hire you, and you to go deal with it with me. Or say they go out for a bounty. Same situation. If you want to make some money off of that, not nearly as much as I'm making, you can come join me, grab your gun, let's go get this guy. And the whole bounty thing where you got to kill him, you don't have, most of those like dead or alive things is kind of just like, in court, didn't really work out too well. Because, you kind of have to prove it was self-defense, which is a mixed bag in those times. Because, it's a wanted criminal. What's he probably going to do? Defend himself from you to not go to jail and get hanged. But you also can't just go out and immediately shoot the guy just straight up, which has been an issue with, was it Cassidy? What's that movie where it's like the coward that shot
was it Butch Cassidy? Like
No, because Butch Cassidy was in like Brazil or something like that.
Jesse
I'm
James.
trying to remember that. Jesse James, the coward who shot Jesse James. That was actually a big legal argument because he shot him like straight up in the back of the head.
Oh yeah,
is straight up murder. That's
sounds
not
like
even
Ancapistan to me, baby. What?
But he went to court for that because that was just straight up murder. That wasn't like him subduing him or like a self-defense fight or anything like that. So you have certain situations like that where you still have your law and order, so to speak. You still have, there's even like the examples of like certain towns will have a law where like if you enter the bounds of this town, you have to surrender your firearms to the sheriff or the local militia or what have you, or it was in the saloon, which to be fair, surrendering your weapons in the saloon might be actually one of the smartest things they've ever done in that time period, next to making opium a totally valid thing to smoke. And because obviously where most people are going to shoot each other is probably where they're shit drunk and you said something about their mother because you're an asshole.
That's one of the unwritten rules. You're not supposed to say anything about anyone's well, not their mom specifically, but their wife or girlfriend.
No, I mean, those are just the basic tenets of just civilization is just don't be roasting people's mothers unless you want to get your ass beat, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So let's leave the mothers out of this.
Yeah, leave the mothers out of this. Like I said, I'm doing mostly from memory, so I'm just trying to combine all this shit from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
This is like a high school presentation, but
the high school presentation where I drank last night and I forgot half the presentation. But
so it's like high school. What's different?
I gotta look at our demographics and see with the under 17 crowd that's listening. We're like, yeah, use Yimra as your for your report in high school.
You'll have the same level of information. I focus a lot more on like the laws I didn't do too much with back then. I think I have the resources somewhere, which I could probably actively look for if you have. We need to stop for questions as well that you guys may have about that time period, so I could also look this shit through my my sources.
Well, so we get into the whole the sheriffs were smart enough to know because generally how you're going about it, they had more of a profit motive because of they're not they're getting taxed from the revenue of other the money they're getting is taxed as revenue for other things, but they know if they it's smaller towns or whatnot that they're not dumb enough to fuck with the people of town because if I want to keep making the money from the taxes here, I need to make sure these people are actually happy with me. And versus now,
especially because you're voted in.
Yeah, now a lot of people don't even give it a lot of sheriffs I don't even give a fuck. They're I'm gonna do what I want because I get money from the state regardless, and I've got a secure job. Good luck trying to fire a cop, and even if you do, he can get picked up at another department or whatever. He still's got his pension. There's cops can be super dicks, right? It's some areas there might be better acting cops than others, but back in those times, as you were saying, they didn't that was a nice fucking meal ticket, right? They didn't want to fuck their shit up.
No, you wanted to take care of the town, protect the town. I mean, of course, you did have your occasional coward sheriff in an easygoing kind of place. Your U.S. Marshals, on the other hand, are pretty much. Say the sheriff has a problem or there's a big gang doing something or, you call the marshals. Then the marshals get involved. The marshals are a hand of the federal government or the state government or the frontiers territorial government of the time, which then answer to the judge of, local circuit or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. They, on the other hand, are more I'd say, still function mostly like modern, state police, except they're not, sitting on their ass waiting for highway tickets like most state police are. They actually, went out say, hey, this town's got a bunch of, a gang or there's a bunch of rustlers doing this or anything like that. The marshals would come in and basically they had a much better set of resources. They usually were former huntsmen, they were former military, they were former something else that they had a better know-how to,
versus today, a former high school bully turned cop.
Yeah, that is the one thing I will grant the old-timey guys is most of these guys had a good set of tools. They grew up in a time where you kind of had to do everything on your own. You had maybe your community, maybe. But, if your mother was a fucking prostitute, then nobody's helping you. Kind of shit. You are fucking assholes.
They're going to be helping the mom, though. Oh, shit.
They would be helping the
moms out of this. I'm sorry. My fault.
Yeah, leave the moms out. What the fuck's wrong with you, bro? So your U.S. Marshals were definitely somebody you would call upon in like a real emergency. Not that the sheriffs couldn't handle it with a posse, but if you need a lot more of a heavier, legitimate, like you fucked with the marshals, you fucked with the U.S. government, that was kind of like their thing. Whereas like, listen, I represent the federal government, and then if the marshals couldn't get the shit done, then you called the army, which, funny enough, usually was your generic cavalry fort nearby, which could be a 3 days ride, 40 miles out. Well, what they would do, they would send like 5 guys and a fucking cannon or a Gatling gun. I'm not kidding. That's what they would usually do. Just send a handful of dudes, some rifles, and like back then, the U.S. military, most of those cavalry guys were kind of seen as scumbags and skells, mostly because most of them were people who were criminals beforehand, or they were kind of just lowlives that wanted to get the fuck out of wherever place they were living. That's not always the case, but that was generally how they were seen at the time. That kind of perspective of like the honorable soldier kind of changed probably around the Spanish-American War, more so towards World War One, because the Philippine insurrection in that war, there was a propaganda game for it, but the yellow journalism of Spanish-American War really helped the image of the U.S. military at the time. But the cavalry, you had your honorable types that were officers, like Custer, who was a cuck and a bitch-made punk.
Cuck Custer.
Honorable cuck.
The honorably discharged cuck.
The Cuck Custer pie. Don't
Yeah,
eat.
honorably discharged. That's a fucking word for it.
He was discharged with like 13 different bladed weapons.
I was about to say something was discharged at him several times, but
so your U.S. military, unless it was like natives, if it was non-native related, they would have probably sent a small group. If it was like natives, they would have sent like a larger unit, usually like a 9-man or more kind of situation. So you do still have
our boys gonna shoot us some engines.
Yeah, that was pretty much like their job, was those forts, because there was a lot of forts in the United States at the time. Not as many as U.S. bases all over the world, statistically, with graphs and shit. But you would have at least a handful of forts per state. And in most states, they could cover that ground within a day or two to get to where they need to be, unless it was like the Rockies. Then fucking forget about it. Good luck. Because most forts, during most of their time, function as almost like a way station in some cases between here and another city, where if you need food, rest, and protection, they were there. But also they worked as, there's an emergency, all right, get your boys on the horses and go out there, while we just kind of earn our check and do fuck all, maybe kill a couple Native Americans, because yet again, cavalry are kind of assholes, which is not shocking. So you still have the U.S. government having a decent effect on the local population throughout the years. It only just got worse and worse throughout the years as things progressed. You know, the beginning of people moving west after we bought the Louisiana Purchase, you had very minimal government. There wasn't enough resources or money at the time. Then the Civil War happened, and then after that, the federal government became more powerful. Nothing like today, of course, but you know, to that time period, I wouldn't say it's for the time period. I wouldn't even say it's equal to the Patriot Act. It'd probably be less than that, but still, you know, they were throwing out land grants like a motherfucker because they wanted an excuse to get more of this land out, which means in the future we could tax it. Yet again, taxes weren't as bad back then. I would literally commit so many felonies to get the taxes they had back then, because it was like whatever this is now is ridiculous. No income tax. You fucking kidding? Base. Yeah, just a property tax or a tax.
I actually have to look because I was thinking about taxes because of the Civil War. I mean, that's another thing I gotta talk to other guys that know more about me. But granted, like this, like for the Civil War aspect, I guess a big part of why the Civil War kicked off was because of taxes. In a sense, and granted, it definitely became about slavery. Obviously, let's not put that.
Yeah, that argument was really annoying.
Yeah, like
states' rights. States' rights to do what? Exactly?
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say it. What states' rights to do what? Own the black folks, people. Let me start drinking while I'm doing this. It's too early for it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, got me, baby. No, because what we're saying is like the South. I think Lincoln was like taxing shit out of ports in the South or whatever, and that's
so part of the whole like the great compromises at the time were like the South was pissed off because there were more free states joining and they were increasing the power like that they had in like relative comparison to like slave states at the time, and the free states were like, yeah, and we're just gonna pass all these tariffs against anything made with slave labor because fuck you. Because honestly, like that is the appropriate response. Like I don't want to say it's the ANCAP response because it's like the government, but like if you have like two ANCAP states and like the one next door has like child slaves, if you were like, yeah, so if we do business with you, which you're forced to do with us, we're just going to tax the shit out of you from our perspective, tariffs privately, until you stop doing that. Or you can just not deal with us. So it's your choice.
Yeah. Interesting on that. Going back to the whole like armies, like, you know, they're like what you say, like 1 to 2 days out because of the like the ports, so to like the way stations, so to speak, Yimra.
Yeah.
Because like part of like my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that like in the beginning times, obviously there weren't like maybe not more than a couple days out, so people were more likely to resolve conflicts within the community.
You had to pretty much deal with your own. You calling the army almost 9 out of 10 times was because of natives, because that's you know you're finding
keeping the colored people down.
Yeah,
terrible.
Because your criminals, they can be dealt with the marshals or the sheriffs or just a local militia, which usually the sheriffs would hire, whatever you want to define that. Same with the marshals, they could do the same thing. Okay. But they usually will get people's ass into gear a lot more marshals, just because I got the federal law enforcement on my side. Yeah, I mean, you generally had to, and also back then, it's not very well known that there was more lawsuits statistically based on like population and such to that time period than there are now. A lot of things were just handled by just going to court and suing somebody, which then may have turned into a blood feud, which there's a bazillion.
It resulted in more court.
Which resulted in more court, which also resulted in like just like range battles between like two different like cattle barons. But generally, you would go to court over something really innocuous or stupid, and then somebody would shoot somebody outside the court or try to shoot the judge or try to beat the fuck out of somebody. Then that would turn into like a family blood feud. And then people had to pick two sides, and then there would be a bigger shootout where like 12 people die or get injured. And then eventually it resolves itself, sort of, not really, down the line, or the federal law enforcement kind of has to intervene.
What was the shit around here?
Hatfield and McCoy is a great example
yes,
of that.
That was it. Because that's around, that was like right around here, like an hour or so or whatever. Funny quick side story is that one of the guys that used to pick up freight here, I think like I was talking one time, I'm like, yeah man, so you can do this, we can have a couple of beers. He's like, no dude, he's like, I can't drink. I'm like, why? He's like I'm kin to like the Hatfields or whatever. I guess when he gets drunk he gets violent. I don't know if it's like a bloodline thing or something. He said he's like that's my like, you know, family lineage, dude. He's like, I can't drink. But that's that was a crazy fucking feud. Like,
oh yeah, no, like people straight up got shot over that shit. And sometimes it was over, say, like someone took a pig or killed a pig or lied about something, or it would start with very innocuous things, and then you have to call someone's manhood into question. You know, like, you're calling me a liar? I'm like, yes, I am. You're a piece of shit. And it gets shot domed right point blank in the middle of the fucking square. It's well, I gotta go to court about this. You just killed somebody. But then the judge might be on the family side because they're like a cousin or they're married into it, or they're like an uncle or something. Which I think happened with the Hatfield and McCoys. I think the judge was one of the family members, if I'm remembering it correctly. Or I think about another family feud or a blood feud, you ever want to call it.
Yeah.
So those weren't super common, but they happened enough that historically speaking, people did talk about it. And I'll bring up another interesting historical thing that a lot of people don't talk about. And I'm sure there's some fucking assholes on YouTube who've talked about it and make it not as fun for me. Is what's called filibustering or freebooting, which is basically during the early 1800s to arguably a little bit later in until the government started doing their own thing with it more so, which is private citizens would go to, say, a state or a country, take it over, and then request the U.S. government to get involved so that they can make it into a territory and then into a state. So okay. Texas is technically an example of filibustering and or freebooting in that sense, because Mexico invited them over, and then they said, we want slaves. And then Mexico said, fuck no, fuck off with that nonsense. And then the Texans, or the U.S. people who went to Texas and then became Texans, said, no, we like our slaves. And then Mexico said, are you fucking kidding?
For the audio listeners, Yimra just shook his chest around like a Southern belle. I like it.
Oh, mama, the summer sun. I must quench my thirst with
Hey,
lemonade.
next episode, can you like put on like prosthetic titties and maybe a wig so I can, like oh, I'm married, so Ben, just you can visualize for me.
Oh,
Do
Christ.
some
Don't put that fucking evil on me, Ricky Bobby. God damn it.
Ricky Bobby.
Put that evil on me. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Right,
Don't you put that evil on me.
So, because I don't remember when we started recording because I can't get a timestamp to save my life, and I'll probably blur. Ben, do you want your name out there? Your full ass name?
My full name, like, does it say Benjamin? Oh, does it say my full name or just my first name?
Well, no, because I realized it had my full name on my video and full name on your video. I renamed it in the beginning of this, but
For me,
I mean, I don't mind, but
well, I mean, I changed it anyway for like, I mean, I'm just gonna scrub out whatever, and the audio aspect of this. I mean, you didn't even like properly say your last name.
well, I could fill in the blanks. Let's be honest.
Yeah, let's fill the blanks.
It's not hard to figure out what the last part of that name is.
And I don't care if people have my name either, because it's like, what are you gonna do with it? Like, my name's so my name's so common anyway. It's like kind of
my name's very common, but there's not many that are Italian and live in the nearby New York area. So I can't. I rather not.
Yeah, rather not. Right. No, I was just saying because like the name on the screen is like for future. I'll just adjust that. But like because I don't know when we started recording, I'm thinking we got about 10 minutes left. So I want to start going over this like a couple of the unwritten rules of the West that I had pulled from some historians. We'll do some stuff. So it says, don't inquire into a person's past. Take the measure of a man for what he is today. I'm like, yeah, like, you know, if he paid for his sins, so like, okay, like I get that. Like, take him, you know, what he's doing now, not what he did in the past.
Yeah, ye who's without thin.
He who is without sin may cast the first stone. What the hell in the list? Go talk to him.
I don't know what was going on there, bro.
What are you drinking right now, by the way? I think that's what's going on. To be honest with you.
I don't even know.
Oh, dude, speaking of which, way off topic. Speaking of the West, I was drinking some bourbon, or whiskey, or whatever. So,
Kentucky bourbon.
Some Kentucky bourbon this weekend. And, dude, because I've been mixing up trying to figure out, like, what I want to get religiously. And I got Wild Turkey Friday. And, man, I've been having, like, two, like, you know, like 2-finger pours or whatever. I had like, or 3-finger, whatever. I wasn't putting fingers into it. Not that.
How is that like? Do you literally? Okay, this is a dumb question. Do you literally measure that by just like taking your fingers and just like holding it up to the glass?
You literally.
Is that literally it?
Do. I don't know.
That's what bartenders do. That's why I usually find the Irishman with the biggest fingers.
Yeah, and for more than one reason. For more than a pour. You know?
Yeah.
So I had So like I had like I've been having like I had like 2 glasses of Maker's Mark like the week before, like, and I was like, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, and I had like a beer, right, because I was up late doing stuff. And then this past weekend, who's messaging me? Stop it, I don't care. So this past weekend, I had like 2 glasses. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really feeling like I wasn't feeling really like anything. I was feeling pretty good. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna like sit down in bed. Is your DoorDash there?
No, I think I had like an Amazon package. It's probably what that is. So
I'm sitting in bed. My wife's next to me, and she's already passed out. I'm watching The Shield, you know, and I'm drinking my beer, and I take a sip, put it down, look at the screen. Next thing I know, it's 4 a.m, and I passed out. I woke up and shook my beer. There's still half a fucking thing left. I'm like, God, what the fuck happened, right? I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have got the beer. Maybe I should have went to sleep. And then, but I didn't learn. And so luckily, like, I think like it cut off like right away. Like I didn't like ruin anything with like Hulu. And then I had like the next night, I'm like, I'm just gonna keep it to 2, like maybe 2-finger pour, 2.5, whatever pours. I just had 2 of those, no beers and shit. And I was in bed, I was drinking water. Same fucking thing, man. I was drinking water, fucking knocked out. I think maybe I'm old. Hey, that's what
I was gonna say.
Probably.
Do you take any type of medication?
No.
I was gonna say,
you're just old dude.
No, I didn't even feel tired, man. Like I was in it watching the shit. I was like, yeah, Mackie, get those fucking scumbag drug dealers off the
dude. I do the same thing. Like I'm just sitting there, just chilling on my couch, and then it just goes. This meeting has been upgraded by the host and now includes
unlimited minutes.
Love it. Running out of time. We removed the 40-minute limit. Okay, so it was about Love it. All right, cool. All right,
So we got unlimited minutes, so you keep going.
All right, everyone, pull out your cacks. All right, yeah. So like I fucking
Mine's already out, baby.
again. I woke up at like 5 because my son's got an ear infection and shit. And he hasn't been sleeping good. So I woke up at like 5 to him because he straight up just crawled out of bed. Like he crawled out of bed, was in the room like standing at the door like a demon, like hello father. I'm like, oh god. I'm like, what time is it? But I realized the TV was on. It went through fucking 6 episodes of The Shield. I was passed out, so I'm like, fuck. So bitch. So that was my funny little whiskey stuff. So continuing on the lists, getting back on topic, since now we have unlimited minutes. Yeah, because apparently they just, I don't know if it's because of coronavirus or something, the pandemic, that they just keep removing the 40-minute limits.
Stimulus.
Yeah,
Extra
minutes. This is our stimulus.
Thank you, Mr. Biden, for the unlimited.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So it's like, then you never steal another man's horse. A horse thief pays with his life. Okay, that's
they were hanged. You were straight up hanged for stealing a horse. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, good.
Fair.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a little ANCAP thing. Violate the NAP. You've aggressed my property. You get to hang now.
Here's the thing too: is that the horses weren't as expensive as generally as the saddles were. The saddles were sometimes more expensive because you got to think about it like almost like a car. I can get a Honda Civic, right? You steal that, that's a felony. It's a felony right there. And then the logic is, you got the Honda Civic, but you're riding this thing all the time. So you're gonna get better seats for the Honda Civic, right? You get upholstery. But back then upholstery was expensive, and if you're gonna make a saddle, you want it to last for fucking ever. So the horses weren't usually as expensive as the saddle itself. But still, stealing a horse was a hardcore felony. Stealing the saddle would probably still carry as a felony because of how much money it was worth. Because theft crimes was still atropos for the worth of the value of the item that was stolen. You could, like today, you can't sue someone over something unless it's $20 or more, or you could probably argue in court if it has an emotional value to you. It's a little trinket, but generally $20 or more is a rule today. I don't care. Remember what it would be for back then. It might not have had a dollar limit. It might be literally anything they stole. Maybe because back then also you steal anything. Back then you're a lot more utilitarian with your items. Anything got stolen from you. Horse though. That's your livelihood for most people. Most people, not everybody had a horse. That'd be like stealing, a car, but more so now, no public transit or anything like that. So you had to fucking huff it and walk it. So stealing a horse was a hangable offense. You would be killed for it.
As you should be. And then there's defend yourself whenever necessary. Duh. Look out for your own, which you were saying is more community based.
You looked out for your town. Yeah. Even if you didn't like somebody, you probably more so looked out for them than some outsider necessarily speaking.
Yeah, because that was I didn't necessarily I don't think I put that part in because it was kind of like redundant. But yeah, it's like even like be nice, be like courageous even to your enemy or whatever that's there.
Well, yeah, back then, you unless you were drunk or an asshole, there was always the whole mindset of being civil to somebody. You could hate someone's guts. You can even word it nicely like, I don't find you the most reputable type, but, and then, you still talk shit, but you handled it much better. I mean, if you look at like any of those Westerns, like really historically accurate ones, how they handle talking to people, it's a lot more eloquent. I mean, just how people spoke from then to now has changed so much, just completely. I mean, there's even terms that we still have today, like dude was not a nice term for somebody. Calling someone a dude was like, you're a dandy. You're a fucking pussy.
You faggot.
Pretty much. Being hip actually came from smoking opium. Being hip was because when you smoked opium, you laid on your side, on your hip. And so being hip meant you were somebody who smoked opium, which was pretty fucking cool, depending what you asked. Or due to certain racist laws during the time, they made opium dens legal, even though you could do cocaine, heroin, morphine, Lundum or Laudum, how you pronounce it. But they did outlaw opium in some places due to racist views of the Chinese at the time, even though opium made heroin. And guess what everybody could do? Heroin. You could get a tin of cocaine. A fucking great example is people play Red Dead Redemption, there's cocaine gum. It doesn't taste
It's
good.
like how like crack has like worse penalties than like actual cocaine.
I think we touched that out on some earlier episodes.
Well, yeah, I touched on the crack
epidemic. Yeah, he touched on the crack a little bit.
Because that was all racist.
Circling back.
Circling back to racism.
Stuff, that's what the next thing I had up in here was. Don't make a threat without expecting dire consequences. What does that remind you of in the ANCAP philosophy or whatever your theory?
Walk around and find out.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, if you threaten someone, let's say, I'm gonna fucking kill you in the West, in the Wild West or whatever. If you told somebody to the face, like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, what would the consequence for that be? Like right in the moment.
Yeah, you would probably call somebody out, like, oh, Billie Jean, you're a coward and a shuckster. It's like, all right, we're gonna go. Well, although we'll go out and shoot each other, but generally those like quick draws are mostly bullshit because most people would literally wait till the guy's walking out, his back's turned, he just shoots him in the back like a fucking coward. Then they go to jail for murder unless the people of town are like, hey, we don't care.
All right, so what if it's a situation where you're in a business meeting and somebody tells you that you should cash out and go take care of your son because he recently became deaf? So you threaten that you're gonna sneak into his house one night and cut his throat. What would the appropriate response there be?
Or the response is, sure, there's no call for that. I can't remember the exact quote, so I can't do as funny as a bit for that.
All right.
There'll be no blood. That was in the early 1900s, like 1912 or something like that.
Ish. So right around the end of the
turn
West.
of the century. Yeah, the end of the West is pretty much there. I mean, it even is the same thing as today, where you can argue in court. I say I'm gonna fucking kick your ass, but I could say it jokingly, or I don't have any actual thing to back it up that I'm actually going to do that. Because you can always say man, I'm gonna kick your ass, but in reality he's not going to. It still can be context based, of course, in the court of law. That just comes down to whose lawyer is better at talking.
Yeah,
how much money you backed up on the judge.
Keep it in context around the witnesses of the time, the saloon if they're talking. She's like, man, I'm gonna beat your ass, right? He's like, oh, he wasn't serious about it. He was just having a couple of drinks. He was like, man, shut up, or I'll beat your ass, right? And it's versus the moment you walk out the fucking saloon doors, I'm going to pummel the fucking shit out of you. That might be considered a little different. You got witnesses to do that. And then never shoot. Oh, hello. Never shoot an unarmed or unwarned enemy. This was known as the rattlesnake code. Always warn before you strike. However, if a man was being stalked, this could be ignored.
Yeah, so, I mean, there was a lot of cases where people would shoot someone who's unarmed or not ready for a fight. Because in reality, if I know the guy is a better shot, there's been a couple of guys who are what you call back then a shootist or a gunslinger. Where back then, there were people who were very well known for being very good at shooting motherfuckers. So they would just take advantage of the fact that they have a certain code, if you will, and just shoot them in the back or shoot them, when they're not looking, kind of thing. So, I mean, was that respected? Not as much as it probably should have, but that's probably also because the people who were calling these people out were cowards, pussies, and people who had no ability to actually win that shootout anyways, but they wanted to get the I shot this guy.
Okay.
I mean,
Dicks,
there are
and assholes.
Yeah, I mean, there were laws that you could, settle dispute through duels for a very long time. I think in some states it still kind of carries as long as there's a law enforcement officer there. That's usually a trial through combat type beat, and not a straight up duel with two fucking pistols. And you gotta walk 10 paces.
Yeah, turn around. It's yo, Aaron Burr, right? Rest in peace, doing some good. Let's see here. Next one up is this is one I disagree with strongly. Never shoot a woman, no matter what. I don't agree with that.
There actually were a decent amount of women gunslingers and criminals. I can't think of. I think Black Betty. I might be just remembering completely wrong. I'm thinking of the song more than anything else. But
no, Black Betty was an actual famous gunslinger.
Like I say, there's a handful of them that were also criminals. Some would take advantage of that. They, dress, as one would call it, even back then to some extent, butch, where you dress more masculine and you'd rob people, and then strip that shit off and look like a proper lady, or not.
Oh my son, no, it wasn't me.
Oh my.
I like that because I'm sure there's most of the time don't you just shoot a fucking woman, right? But I'm sure actually the women of the time too probably weren't I don't know, fucking do it probably not today where dudes are I'm sorry, and then a woman starts beating the shit out of some dude. It's well, I can't hit her back. I'm dude, there's a line at some point.
Fuck that shit, man. White woman spotted.
White woman spotted. Activate. Let's see.
It is unloaded. This is safe.
Mine's loaded. I don't have one.
Yeah.
I don't have one rack though, just because I'm like, whatever. Who cares? Like, no one's coming in after me. Not yet,
3 seconds, man. 3 whole seconds. They're gonna come and fuck you in the ass.
No, I just have some weird
I just
thing
start
like
throwing all my discarded vape cartridges at them.
yeah, right. I've got a bunch of crap because I've been cleaning the office. Like
The thing weighs like 3 or 4 pounds, so this thing actually would hurt.
I think mine's like a pound. Yeah, cause I was cleaning up like in here and stuff or whatever. I'm like, I gotta be recording. I gotta clean up a little bit, but like the room right behind me is still a kind of fucking disaster. But whatever,
Yeah.
I don't care. I'll keep walking. There was one point in the video that people watching might go back. They were like, I had turned and you could see all the shit back there. I'm like, yep. Like put the chair back away. Real quick, and then. Let's see. Then honesty is absolute. Your word is your bond. A handshake is more binding than a contract. What do you guys say about that one?
Yeah.
Word.
So there were certain rules back then that, like, you know, I think of the most famous example was from Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained, where it's like you can't have like a law that's binding without like a handshake, and a lot of things that most people, you know, if it was like a mutual agreement, they just shake on it. Then if you call someone out as a liar, then you just shoot them and call it a day. So there is that. I couldn't tell you much more on that fact, but I mean there was a lot of just you would have to respect what was said and you would have to abide by it, because then go to court or you get shot.
Well, yeah, because without your word, why would anyone do business with you, right? If you say one thing and you have a reputation of being the guy that's like, oh yeah, well he shook on it. And he didn't uphold his end of the deal, and you know, around a small town or whatever, if that got out, it's like no one's gonna want to deal with you, and then you're kind of fucked in that sense. And then the final bit, which I saved as the final bit, obviously, is live by the golden rule. The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them done unto you. Was the foundation of the code. In John Bernard books, in the Shootist, express the rule in different, more direct language. As, quote, I won't be wronged, I won't be insulted, I won't be laid a hand on, I don't do these things to other people, I require the same from them. Never try on another man's hat or mount his horse without permission, right? So it's like, what is that? That's basically the non-aggression principle. Is that
pretty much
don't wrong me, don't lay a hand on me, don't insult me, whatever. Insulting's kind of a stretch, right? Like you can insult me, like whatever, but like,
cuck.
Yeah, don't lay a hand on me, don't threaten me. And I require the same for you. That's the non-aggression principle. Marcel touched on this last episode we had. It was like I am promising that I am not going to initiate aggression against you, and I want you to promise the same back, or else we're gonna have a problem.
Yes.
Essentially, so it's like, but yeah, if someone's like, man, I don't know if I could do that in the West, how long do you think they would last? If they actually openly said that I will wrong you if I choose to. I don't really know, but I think that's I think the West is interesting. I like to maybe at some point like dive like even deeper, have like more stories of how like find a specific town maybe there was like a model of like, hey, like what if this was kind of like kind of a thing for like Ancapistan, a little model for that. Because about the court system with friends and stuff, it kind of gets, that the same thing. If we're gonna be like realistic here, like in Ancapistan, if you've got courts where like there's family members of dudes doing bad shit on it all the time, how is that gonna work out for the other parties involved, right? So like a proper criticism, where the response might be, would probably be from the ANCAP perspective, that there would be the conflict of interest. Right, to where that judge couldn't represent or do anything, so there's no like well, he let him off because he's friends with the brother of the guy or whatever. They suck each other's dick behind the Tonys every weekend. You know what I mean? Tony's Pizzeria. Fucking waving. He's like, yeah, it's me right there.
Oh my god.
As I just because I would think that because if like in the Wild West, if there was only like one fucking judge, that's bad for business because he's got a monopoly on the law and how it's dealt out, right? So that's a big issue.
Unless your logic is also the town could be like, hey, you've been doing a bad job, buddy. Get the fuck out of here, or just remind him, hey.
Yeah, that's a point I wasn't thinking about because I'm trying to do it like off the cuff here, but yeah, because obviously with judges favoring like if the people of town are like, you just let off your fucking nephew for murder, what the fuck, and then bro? Yeah, they would have more of the means of removing him than, you know, if a judge let off the nephew nowadays, right? And we've seen kind of shit like that. Well, not even that. If you even know somebody politically connected, because like Amy Schumer, for example, just popped in my head. I don't know if she got a DUI. It's like a decade or so, like when she was younger, or a drug bust, and because Schumer is her family, she got off with like maybe a slap on the wrist.
Of course.
So, and what's the repercussions of that nowadays? Nothing. Schumer's still there for like it was his 100th year in Congress, whatever. And back then, as Yimra was saying, you could probably get that judge at least thrown out for the conflict of interest. Like, you should have ruled it fairly. And this is not justice, so you need, like, you are not a judge if you're not like dealing out the justice that is righteous.
Exactly.
So, and then yeah, I think that's kind of it. If there's anything else we need to touch on,
you can always talk about like the whole like mining and the credit system, or the Pinkertons as well.
Oh yeah, that shit. Like, well, the Pinkertons is interesting to me because I like looking at that, because I know the mining stuff was like super fucked up, like that.
Yeah, you're the company's store where you couldn't. The money they would give you was basically fucking meaningless. They could only use it within the bounds of like
almost
the mining.
like our money. I'm just kidding.
More so here though. Yeah. I see what you're doing.
Well, because that was the thing, is that you could convert your mining company money into regular currency, but the exchange rate was so fucking shit.
And almost nobody would take it anyway. You could probably exchange it, but I couldn't think of a single example that I remember that would be any use.
I had the understanding is that the mining company would do that for you. So if you had like $1,000, like I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean if they did that, yeah, that's it. But I thought you meant like somebody would take that like rent like another person.
No, like you can with the company that basically owned the whole area, like they had the monopoly of the area, right? They would convert, like, let's say you have like $1,000 or something. Like, well, here's $5 USD.
Yeah,
go spend that somewhere. Man, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, I would be surprised even if they did exchange it for that, because they kind of just tell you to go fuck yourself. You know, if you don't like the money we give you, you can go somewhere else. But your company store money you would get from it, because it'd have unrealistic quotas to give you bonuses or something like that. You would spend it in the store. Say you had to buy your shovel, you had to buy your axe, that you had to pay for the room and board, and then by the time that you did all this, you would be either in debt or had so little of that company credit that you really couldn't, go anywhere with it. You couldn't, make money. So you're basically the equivalent of slavery. I think would be a little too strong a word, but indentured servitude, but more fucked than indentured servitude, because usually at least then you had like land you get after, which is still fucked up. You had to do indentured servitude, but blah blah. So there was really a great example of just when you have a business going way too far with just having the ability to fuck people over to a point like that. It'd be the same with mining, other kind of mining towns where the inflation rate would be so high. Say there's a gold mining town. So gold is basically not worth as much because that area is so flooded with it. And they know that everybody has a certain amount, that this shovel is going to cost this amount of weight in gold. But meanwhile, I can bring that same amount of gold to go to New York and I can make a fuck ton of money. But here it's worth nothing. And it can buy me a fucking shovel, that nugget. That could buy me the equivalent of like a house. Which, it was just a crazy inflation rate. And then to move on to the Pinkertons, which have a very interesting history with Mr. Pinkerton, whose first name I'm not going to remember, who was like a Scottish man who moved to the U.S. and made a detective agency, which were common back then because you didn't have your detectives or investigators or inspectors really weren't a big thing until you get later into the 1800s, because you had like Scotland Yard was pretty much, or the French I think made the first true detectives, and then Scotland Yard was probably the more famous one from that time period. So then you'd hire these guys out. They were a private agency, which have been actually bought up by some Swedish company nowadays, in fact, which were functioned as spies, as private investigators, detectives that you could hire for a municipal police department, militias, and they worked during the Civil War. They actually had a female detective on there as well during that time, whose name I also can't remember. That's something you gotta Google. But they were hired to do a lot of things, from finding a missing person, from finding someone who committed murder and say you need someone's committing crimes against a railroad. You can have railroad agents, which are a separate entity from detectives from the Pinkerton agency, because different agencies. Pinkerton is just the biggest one, made the most money, and historically had the biggest mark that affected U.S. law for years after, mostly with the Homestead strike, which is like the biggest example when like a Pinkerton, where they had the Anti-Pinkerton Act, like straight up just directly Anti-Pinkerton Act, I think, which was happened in 1893. That act happened, but then the strike happened in 92, and they hired out like about 300 agents to go for the strike in Homestead. I think was the place.
Yeah,
it was a steel mill, and they hired 300 of these guys, and they had a bunch of rifles. I think they may have had a cannon or a Gatling gun there as well. And basically, a shit ton of people got hurt. A couple people got killed, and the people
like 16 people got killed.
Yeah, and then there was because it was a strike because it was unfair wages or something like that. And so they hired the agents to say, hey, you're not striking. So they let the scabs in, and obviously you strike people. That number didn't like several thousand people by the time shit went bad. Are going to obviously outmaneuver 400 people who are just being paid. They don't have the best incentive here. It's not, this is my business or this is my whatever. I'm being paid to do this, but I'm not going to die for this fucking shit. Are you kidding me? Yeah. I think it was almost like 5,000 people were against 400. And eventually it was a lot of bloodshed, a lot of people getting their ass beat, some people getting shot and killed. And basically the governor of the state had to pretty much, end the shit. I think they called the U.S. military because it's a city, so it's going to be a closer fort or what have you. And they had to be sent on trains away to get the fuck out of there. And then the Homestead Act, the Anti-Pinkerton Act was written in 1893, which barred them from functioning in certain states. Not that, I think that also include other private detective agencies. Not that they still did anyways. It's not going to stop them. This is officially, they can, for example.
Because the Pinkertons are interesting to me because it was like... Because I know, like, anarcho-communists and maybe, like, left libertarians or actual, like, state communists might use the Pinkertons as reference to, like, private company violence or whatever. But I need to, like... I gotta, like, deep dive in that because I'm, like, it's, like, one time that they really did, like, on a grand scale, like, a big scale, did some terrible shit. So I gotta look into, like, the backing, right? Like, the backing they had, what legislation was on the books that this mill... or whatever was the only I'm sure that mill was like the fucking monopoly of the area, right? Was there any other competing mills? I don't know. I'm just shooting the shit out there. But like, if the Pinkertons' entire history was doing private crime, then yeah, I would probably like to agree with the ANCOMs. But if you're gonna use just the one, now granted it was pretty fucking bad, right? But like, that's your one example of how like,
I think that's just the most notable. But there's definitely I just from rough memory, there definitely were more.
Basically, what I would like to get at with people is it's not as black and white as just that, right? There's more elements at play with a lot of these things that happen. Like there might have been legislation backing the Pinkertons at the time, right? Or even
there was the government loved using them.
Okay.
I mean, they used them during the Civil War as spy masters. So I mean, the government did use them. Yeah. Just less and less time around because they had their own resources.
To be fair, I think before... I don't know if it was before that strike that they stopped subsidizing the Pinkertons. Or maybe it was after. I don't know. I have to look. And again, I don't have knowledge on it. Like, I was going to try to do, like, an episode one time about the Pinkertons, the whole history, like, and all that.
So in the 1870s, they actually did have, like, a certain amount of money that was given to what was at the time, like, Department of Justice. And it wasn't very much enough money at the time. So the Pinkertons were usually contracted out because it'd be cheaper than the money of value that they did use. Okay. But of course, that Anti-Pinkerton Act in 93 kind of shot that issue down. So it's not that they wouldn't use them all the time, but they would use them a decent amount depending on what the situation was. They would hire them out if, say, the marshals are having a hard time, they need more resources, and they want to save money, you'd hire out the Pinkertons because they're very good at their job. They got shit done. That's why they fucking worked as spy masters in the Civil War.
Yeah. Shit. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like I just wish everyone stop like the face value. Like the one article
I mean,
saying, "Oh yeah, this happened." Like, okay, but what else was going on, like parallel to this, at the time? Like,
I'm of the opinion that depending on the company you hire and what their moral standing is, which depending on the moral standing of a company usually means profit motive and nothing else. You could definitely run into some problems unless you have baseline like rules with that said group, because I mean, if you look at through history, if they're the less constraints you have on certain groups, it can get dangerous. But then if you put too much constraints, then they're just going to act outside the law anyways. So you kind of run into that catch-22.
well, my thing, my biggest problem, and I think I've said this before, where it comes to like private businesses or people, is that it's about copyright laws, right? Because that's in the Constitution. There's actually a video I've been meaning to watch that someone did their own little analysis of the Constitution and say it's actually a crony document. It was actually never meant to give anybody rights, right? Or even outline it. It was basically just a document to help, like, you know, J.P. Morgan or whatever, or something like that. Like something along those lines. Basically, the Constitution was never meant to protect the people. It was meant to protect the corporations. And if you look at, if you look at a lot of stuff like because copyright law, for example, is built in the Constitution, where you can copyrights, trademarks, and then eventually like patents or whatever. That was not in the Constitution, I don't think, but that falls under copyright. So you're already given companies the ability to monopolize from the get-go. So that's a big issue, because when you get down throughout all of history, you could see all these companies that, because of, you know, patents, like patent law, trademarks, copyrights, there's really no competition in some regards and all that. And then when you put the private property in perspective of that, then you have more of an issue. If like the oil companies or whatever owning the whole area, giving their own fucking money to people to use, they basically kept them in, you know, indentured servitude, so to speak. Because you can't tell those people, man, just if you don't like it, leave. It's like, I fucking can't.
The red-blooded American argument, which is,
oh god,
where I work at McDonald's and I need to make more money. It's like, well, get another job. That's a person who doesn't have a college education, and getting into a union job may take too long, or they don't have the physical ability. You know, there's more to it than just, oh, if you don't like it, find another job. Is still one of the most annoying arguments. Like, you don't like this job, go another one. Have you tried?
Bro, just fucking just go get fucking licensed real quick, because that's free.
Yeah,
like, go to license something, get into it.
Totally doesn't take like a year or 2 or 3 or 4 to get done.
To get a good paying union job, you have to wait online, which is a big thing in New York City for certain unions. You have to wait on a line, then it has to get processed. Then they got to get all their friends and family and connections in first, then you.
Yeah.
And the one thing I like about them is they don't give a shit if you got a college education or your background in that case, except for, are you a friend of somebody? Do you know somebody? Which to be fair, I always say, if you do know somebody and you're like, oh, I'm too ashamed to use that as an advantage, bro, if you know somebody and get you a job, fucking take it.
Yeah, for real.
As long as you lay the groundwork of treat me like everybody else, work-wise, which you can't totally do unless that person's like uber professional. I always say, like, I'm too prideful to do that. It's like, why?
Oh, I'd use stuff. Shit. If I had somebody to use, like, yeah, man, give me in, baby.
And if you don't, you know, you make your own connections with somebody. If a friend can get you a job, take it. If it's a good job. I'm saying, don't work at a fucking gas station if you're gonna fucking hate it and not make as much money as you would another place. It's gonna take some more time. That you know, always hate that.
What about working behind the gas station, selling drugs?
That's I would say based, except for
based,
you know,
and red pill.
I would almost say based, except for the industry for most drugs is like the most abhorrent, disgusting shit you'd ever hear about. Except for weed. But if you're a weed dealer, I find you to be cringe and gay. Male weed dealers, I hate to no end, and I will go on a rant for 8 hours. I'll keep it simple. Most male weed dealers straight up just sexually harass people. Like, if you give me a blowjob, I'll give you this job. Like, bro, $20 weed is not worth beneathing myself to giving oral sex to a guy who thinks he's Scarface.
Bro, let me just, like, if you want this fucking gram, let me fuck you in the ass for about 10 minutes.
That's why female weed dealers are the best, because they won't sexually harass me, and even if they do, I'll almost take it as a compliment, almost. But I still don't want to be sexualized when I'm buying drugs.
Yimmer, I'm sorry. I've had like the exact opposite experience. Like I've usually
with
my
male
weed dealers are usually cool for me, and like I've had like
Oh,
some
no, there are
chicks who
cool
are
ones.
seriously like.
No, there are definitely cool ones. I'm saying for the female aspect that have to deal with weed dealers, it's 9 out of 10 times being sexually harassed by some scale who can't get laid. Bro, you sell weed. You should have enough money to flex with a nice fucking set of clothes and a car. You sell drugs for a living, bro.
I gotta tell this story just because like this used to happen to me. So like I used to buy back in the day. This was like probably 8 years ago now. I used to buy from like this blonde chick who will not go named, who was dating a friend of mine, and she always wanted to like go for a ride around the block, and like she would just like, oh, turn here, and always like it was always like killing time, and like she would always take us through like this area in my city. It was called Central Park, and like you would go there like in a car at night to like fuck. And like we were always like she would always like drive through there, and like literally every time I was just like, I just want the weed. Like I just don't want to deal with you.
I just want the weed.
Literally, I just want to get that and just
I want
go
the weed,
home.
Not the grass. Okay, give me the shit.
Literally, yeah, dude.
Yeah, I
like,
want your seeds and stem and your fucking like. It's been out in the sun for fucking 8 days after you pack your
Oh my God.
shit. You could smell it. I'm not a big weed person, but I've dealt with it long enough where I'm just like, this is garbage. You're selling it for how much? Bro, I sell cars. I've never seen someone rip somebody off this fucking hard.
Bro, this is grass clippings. Like, what the fuck?
Bro.
All right.
I'll get a good whiff in that.
I think, like, again, I have no idea when we started this, but I think we're about an hour, and I think we've talked enough or whatever.
All right, well, I got to end it off with a twink harem.
Oh, of course.
Right, yes, of course.
Give me a reason to talk about it. Give me something.
Okay,
Throw something in there.
Were there any twink gunslingers?
Oh, actually, for that time period, doing gay shit was kind of like not totally normal, but it did happen more often than one would think because you're out on a trail. Depending where you are, there's probably not a lot of prostitutes, which was actually
Brokeback Mountain,
which was the main money maker in the Wild West. Was a good chunk of it was prostitutes. They actually theorized in some circles that prostitution may have helped build the West because a lot of money would go into a town based on the prostitution, which I think prostitution is disgusting. But
so I will vouch for that. There is a town 2.5 hours away from me called West Wendover in Nevada. It's just over like the Utah-Nevada border, and that was where the Mormons would go to drink and literally just buy prostitutes and then come back and then
so basically do everything. Yeah. So in the Wild West version of my twink harem cult compound, I'm just gonna keep adding more words to it. A twink compound plus. Let's just keep it
just
simple.
have to do the letter abbreviation like LGBTQBFFL.
It's LGBTQIA plus. Fuck you. I know my fucking history. No, but in the the twinks, if they want to be cowboy twinks, sure, I'll ride them like a saddle. I don't give a shit.
Okay. Actually, and then I'll finish off with one question. I have not seen Brokeback Mountain. Have you guys seen Brokeback Mountain?
Yes, it's very sad actually.
I don't care about that.
Okay.
I want to ask because I've never seen it, but I always assumed that Jake Gyllenhaal was the bottom.
You have to watch it. I'm not telling you.
Come on!
You have to watch it.
I'm gonna Google it. Fuck you. I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. It's like Jake Gyllenhaal totally took in the ass.
Who was the bottom in Brokeback Mountain?
But then now you have to Google that, and now the people on Google know you're gay. Who wins here? Me.
All right. Well, I enjoyed the episode as always, guys. You take it easy, and until next week.
All right, guys.
All right. Later.